Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by jmoney. Jay is an award-winning personal finance blogger, experimenter, consultant, and daddy times three. In this episode, we'll be discussing Jay's thoughts on how we change the way we think about money and defining financial success. Jay, welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you. It's nice to be here, man. It's nice to see your face from our communication over the years.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear. I mean, you're one of the OGs in the personal finance space. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story?
Yeah, it's nothing too crazy. I'm just a regular guy, and back in 2008, my fiance and I at the time were looking for a place to rent together. We were looking for a 1 or 2 bedroom. Kind of got lost, took the wrong turn, saw a townhouse for sale. We weren't even looking to buy. One thing led to another. 48 hours later, we signed. We were in $350,000 debt for this house. We were excited about it. But that kind of launched me into thinking I better get control of my money. I'd never been like really good, but really bad. I've kind of just been even. But I started searching hey, I need to learn how to budget. I need to learn how to control my spending. And I accidentally came across this whole blogging community online, which I didn't know existed. I didn't know what a blog was. And I just started reading people's stories of money. And mainly this guy, my money blog, Jonathan, mymoneyblog.com. He's still around actually, all these 20 years later. But he used to share his net worth. Like, here's my savings, here's my debt, here's my investing. And I had never seen anyone's money before. I mean, that was like crazy to me. People talk about money, but you never see real life examples. And so every month he would repost, his new net worth. It'd go up and go down. He'd share what he did, good, bad. But that really one-on-one experience really changed me and really got me to pay attention to my money. And then after a couple of months, I was like, well, I'm gonna write a blog, and I'm gonna be fun and talk about drinking beer, and I'm gonna make it cool. So I named it Budgets Are Sexy. I was like, oh, people are gonna search for that, sexy, it'll come to me. Even though it's not what they're looking for, right? But that was like how naive I was. And I did the same thing. I started sharing my net worth, which at the time I think it was around $40,000 maybe. And I started sharing, like every day I would blog my thoughts, anything relating to money. And after a year or two, I started making money through advertising, and it became my full-time job, much to the surprise of all of us. And here we are 15, 16 years later. I've done other projects. I've created projects, shut down projects. I sold Budgets Are Sexy. I bought it back. So I'm still there. So it's, been a fun adventure, but that's how it all started, just from Googling and, just seeing real life people talk about money. I think it's great.
Yeah, well, it's a great story. And I've followed, all your stuff for years now. And one of the things I've always loved is what you talk about is making money a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun, because it's like, it's super serious. People, when they talk about their money, it's like sometimes they're going to a funeral. It's like,
oh, it's horrible. Yeah. And that's, so I'm very lighthearted and positive, and I don't know, I'm not like the meats and potatoes of finance. I call myself like the dessert. Like, I get you excited, interested, and then once you're interested, you kind of can deep dive from there. But that's it. Like, all this stuff we have, every single person has to do with money, and there's more fun ways to do it than, the suit and tie type of stuff that I'm not. You can't really see. I have a mohawk, but it's a bad hair day, so I'm wearing a hat. So I'm always, people are surprised that I talk about money a lot because I don't look that part. But like, there's lots of us that just care about people and trying to help them with their money.
Yeah. So, let's talk about Budgets Are Sexy. I mean, it was one of the first money blogs that I think really gained a lot of traction is
Mhm.
like, what do you think was different about it that really drove the attention
Hmm.
to it and people loving it?
Yeah, I think I told lots of jokes and I would even like curse in there every now and then. I think I tried to be the one that was more like fun and engaging. I'd ask questions, I commented. Like I spent hours a day responding to comments, responding to emails, which a lot of people weren't doing. Some people did. And there was a few blogs before me that were really big. And they're very good, just very straightforward and not as I guess like storytelling as much. And so me, like I'm not a writer by trade. I'm not a finance guy by trade. I have no degrees. But I always just told the story of what's going on in my life relating to money. And I know you say a lot of people like it. A lot of people don't like it as well. And and they tell me, I've been called like many names over the years. But at the end of the day, like, it's just I can't be anyone else but myself. So and I think that's the beauty of the community. Like there's lots of like money itself hasn't changed in thousands of years. It's a very simple thing, but people don't relate to some people, or they need it be told differently, or told in a different way. And so we all add to that plethora of advice out there, just in our own different way.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you. Is I think, people get tied into that, like, being, we talked about that being serious, but,
Yeah.
um, hearing the same old story in the same old way that, telling it in a different way is going to resonate with different people before people are going to say, hey, I'm turned off by money,
Yeah.
but, maybe, the way Jay is looking at it resonates with me because I kind of get him. He's having a little fun. He's
Hmm.
not, the suit and tie
Right.
financial services professional. And like you said, is, you don't necessarily have to have training because you're talking about the personal side
Yep.
of money. And I think we forget about that, the personal and personal finance.
Yeah.
And I think
Right.
that's one thing that you've done. I know that it's resonated with me is it reminds me, to be human when I
Hmm.
talk about money. And I think that's probably one of the things that, I feel has probably contributed to your success. And I think people should remember that is, be personal with your money. It's part of your life, but
Yeah.
doesn't have to rule your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Oh man, you should have a podcast or something.
Yeah, maybe one of these days. Hell, shoot, we have a podcast. Hopefully, somebody's listening.
That was a tweetable statement there.
So, one of the things you talk about is that financial success is more about freedom than the dollars. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Why is financial success more about freedom than the money?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us get caught up in wanting more money, more this, but at the end of the day, like there's a point to money. Like that money gives you something, right? Some people want the fancy cars and homes, and that's fine. Most people just want to live their ideal lifestyle. They want their freedom to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And that's what money, gives you. And it took me, I mean, when I started my blog in 2008, like I was very like money hungry. I was like, I'm gonna hustle, I'm gonna make money. I want to be a millionaire. Being a millionaire is cool, like I just want to say I'm a millionaire, which is ironic because people who become millionaires, they're not spending millions, they're like saving it, which is the opposite of what you think. But
Hmm.
that's what I wanted. I was like, I'm gonna hustle, and so I did. I was like, I just want more and more and more money. And over the years, probably when I hit 400,000 ish, 500,000 net worth, I started realizing that like my lifestyle was changing, and I started doing more on the daily that made me happy. It wasn't like tied to a number. And even when I hit a million, like nothing crazy happened. It was still me, still my life. The only thing that changed is in that mindset, over the years, my mindset changed. And I realized, oh man, now I feel more comfortable. Now I could, not work as much if I don't want to, or take some more risky, investments or risky jobs or whatever. But that was freedom. So the more I made up to a certain point, the more freedom I got, and some people, we're talking about traveling. Some people want money so they could just travel the world, and that's great. Others don't want to travel, but they want to, fancy motorcycle or whatever. It doesn't really matter what you want. But the point of money is to be happy and to live your life the way you think is fit. And the nice thing is some people can be happy with a lot less money, and some people need, $10 million to be happy. So hopefully you skew on the lower end and you don't need to, make as much to be happy.
Yeah, well, I think you said so many wonderful things there, but I think, that ending point is that it's your own personal definition of financial success. It doesn't matter what somebody else views as financial success. I think one of the other things you talk about is that people constantly stay in an accumulation mode
Yeah.
and they have a hard time switching to spending mode. And that's the whole point of accumulating money is so that you can spend it later on, so don't be scared to spend a little bit. I love that you talk about that.
Yeah. And that's a
I think
new
that's
trend in the blogging, in the FIRE financial, early retirement genre that many of us are in, is now it's like, great, you've hustled. A lot of us, you've seen our journey making money, then we hit it, we're retired. But now, like, what do we do? And some of us have a hard time spending that money. So, so now, like, there is a big shift to like spend. Even the famous book that's out now, Die with Zero, the whole point is to do, like, give it away and be happy and live your life and don't have any money in your bank account when you die, which is pretty extreme, but like that mentality is starting to come back. Of course, like, if you're just starting out in your journey and you don't have any money, then, it's just, so, but yeah, you do want to get in the habit of enjoying your life. And a lot of the stuff we think more money will bring us, like, we can actually do now, like take time off or do hobbies and stuff. You can work it incrementally into your life daily, whether you have $1 million or you have, $100.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the other things that you talk about that I think resonates with people more than traditional financial services is that you're talking about goals and things that money can do for you
Yeah.
rather than about specific products, because nobody wants to talk about a 401k. It's not very exciting.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of the financial education out there. But, I think what's happened with the personal finance community is they talk about concepts like fire. And we can
Yeah.
talk about extreme fire or slow fire or coast fire and, like
Right.
which one's better. But I think what's important is that it's helping people achieve a goal
Yeah.
rather than saying, okay, well, here are the tools that you can use, but it's something that you can achieve. And I think that's what resonates with people. So it's awesome. Uh, it's out there. So one of the
Yeah.
things, you talk about a lot is your health.
Mhm.
And how has health tied into your money and your financial journey?
Well, I would say up until 2 years ago, it didn't really. I'm 44 now, but when I was 41, 42, like, I had a health scare. I started having these like sores in my mouth and like these blisters. And then at one point I couldn't swallow. And I'm like, oh, I should probably like go to the hospital. I'm a typical guy. It took me forever to start looking for help. But turned out I have this rare disease, autoimmune disease. But it also happened to be, we were talking about Motley Fool. I worked for the Motley Fool for a little bit, building out a website for them. And then that contract ended, and I happened to be when I had a couple of months window of no work that I got sick. And so I had time to recuperate and to figure out what was going on, and it's a lifetime disease. But at the time, it was like the hardest part when you don't know, you don't have any medicine, your life's turned upside down. But which it was horrible. But financially, like, I didn't have to think about money one time. Like, it was just not an issue, like, I didn't have to worry. I had all that set up. And so it wasn't like additional stress on top of health issues. So that's the perfect world. You only get sick when you have money saved up and you don't have to worry. It's not reality, obviously, but that is the power of money too, right? Like, yes, it could buy you stuff. It could accomplish these goals we're talking about. But then at the end of the day, it could also just give you peace of mind knowing it's like one less thing to worry about as a human. For the most part, you always worry, but it gives you a lot of peace of mind.
Definitely. Well, let's dive into that just a little bit. Did you have health insurance? Was health insurance helpful for you
Yes, I had
in
health
that situation?
insurance. My wife still works. She enjoys it. So we are on her plan. And so that covered a lot. It took months to diagnose. So there was tons of copays and all kinds of stuff in there. But yeah, if it wasn't for health insurance, yeah, so the medicine that I have to take once every couple of years whenever it flares up, I have to do 2 injections, and each one's $20,000. So I've done
Wow.
about 4 of them so far. So that's what, 24, that's $80,000 that we would have spent. And I think we ended up paying $3,000, which is still a lot, but obviously not 80,000. So insurance definitely helped, in that regard. And honestly, before that, like I've had insurance my whole life, but usually I'm like, I'm healthy, nothing, I'm young, nothing's gonna happen. Like I'm typically that kind of person. And so now I'm like, oh man, like stuff can happen because you never, no one ever expects it, of course. But yeah, health insurance helped for that.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes people miss that is the value of protecting against certain risks
Yeah.
is, you can look at that, when you're thinking about your investment portfolio, you hedge against the downside maybe by buying bonds and stocks. I mean, we're definitely, this is way beyond my expertise as well as talking about, portfolio structure, but
Yeah.
through your financial life, it's just like, it's like if you're driving somewhere, you carry a spare tire maybe, and it's
Yeah.
just like, that happened with your health is, you had the spare tire, so it helped you. Okay, maybe that's a horrible analogy,
Yeah.
but
No,
I hope people know
it's
where I'm going with that.
yeah.
That,
Same with car insurance, home insurance, flood. I mean, gosh, there's like a million insurances. I think I even have umbrella insurance, which covers stuff that other stuff doesn't cover. So I will say a lot once you have a certain amount of money, because usually it covers like big catastrophes, right? Like for car and home stuff, some people in fire is like, we don't even use insurance, so we just self-insure at that point because you have the money to cover it, and so you don't have to keep spending money every month. So interesting, a lot of this stuff you start out with, even budgeting, a lot of people track their finances, budget, reach financial independence, and they're like, I'm not going to budget anymore, like I'm done, which is cool. It's ironic because you spend all this time and then you don't have to do it. So there is hope for people like, I'm tired of budgeting, tired of insurance, tired of thinking about it. At a certain point, if you keep going strong and it works out, you don't have to think about it anymore. So that's the perk of it all down the road.
definitely. No, that's a great thing. And just talk about umbrella insurance since you have 3 boys is it's good because if they're being boys and they have a friend over who gets hurt
Yes.
on your property, umbrella
Yeah.
insurance is going to take care of that.
Right,
So
right. Yeah. 3 feisty boys. That is something. Yeah, it will definitely happen. I don't know when, but sometime.
yeah, between 3 boys, something's going to
Yes,
happen.
exactly.
Oh man. So let's get into the get ready questions.
Okay.
Is the first one is what basic money concept do you wish people knew?
I already talked about a little bit, but that spending versus saving aspect. Mr. Money Mustache is a really good person that explains this and has lots of good articles. But basically, the less money that you spend, the less money you need to earn, which is a very simple concept, but usually when you start getting a job and making more money, usually the more money you make, the more you spend. So like you're always breaking even, like even if you're making, $200,000, you're usually spending a lot more than you were when you're making $20,000. But if you are able to be happy spending less monthly or yearly, you don't need to kill yourself earning a ton more, or you can earn a ton more and bank it and bank it. And then after, 10, 15 years or whatever, just not work anymore. Again, it goes on priorities and what you want out of life. But that really, even for me, I've been blogging for 3 or 4 years until I like had this epiphany of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what could I get rid of? Especially like monthly recurring fees. Like I was paying,
Mhm.
150 for an iPhone, and I don't know, like I'll spend like $300 a month on stuff. And I'm like, is there anything here that gives me happiness that's less? And I did this like challenge everything. I went through all of my recurring bills. I was like, what can I do, cut and get rid of? Because that's every month keeps compounding on top of each other. Right. And so I cut out like $300 or $400 a month, which that was, 7, 8 years ago, which I don't know, that's a lot of math, but it's thousands of dollars that like I haven't had to spend. And also which allowed me to hit the fire and to be somewhat retired right now because I started cutting back earlier. So now I don't have to work another 5 years just to, keep up with expenses. So as simple as that is, I mean, if you really wanted to get hardcore, you can just like bare bone it. Like, what do I need to spend to survive? And then could I cut everything else and be happy, or maybe 80% happy? Maybe you can't, but if you can, it's like, well, hell, you can have so much more life later on by cutting things now and then just letting time do its thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, what that reminds me of is KonMari, the whole KonMari method, and the
Yeah,
magic of hiding is that's exactly what you did is you
yeah,
reviewed everything and go, does this bring me joy? I mean, that's
yeah,
exactly
yeah,
what Marie Kondo teaches. And I think for people, is you can tidy up your finances that way and find things, is you may not be able to change what you earn, but you can change what you spend. And you can avoid lifestyle creep, which is what you were talking
yeah,
about earlier. You get a raise, oh boy, let's get a new car right away.
yeah.
Or, we can upgrade our house or whatever. It's like maybe don't change your spending, right away and put that extra money into savings and see where that leads.
Yeah, or just
Um,
compare it like if you want to take a dream vacation or because most of the things our dreams are like long term, like a dream vacation, retirement. They're like so far out and it seems like it takes forever. But like your car example, upgrade a car, spend $20,000 more to get a car, or take a trip around the world. Oh, well, there's your dream. If that's your dream, you could actually do it, But like comparing it, it like helps me at least, especially if I'm shopping, like, oh, I like this shirt. Like, would I rather have this dream or even cash than this shirt? And usually I pick the cash or the dream, but it's hard to, but you can start comparing early on until you're like, oh man, like I got this down.
Definitely. Well, I think you said something very important there is that dream and the vacation is, that ties into the health scare you had is,
Yeah.
take the experience right now
Yes.
while you're able to, because a lot of people say, well, I'm going to travel when I retire at age 70. Age 70 may not even come,
If you're
or you
alive,
may not
yeah.
be up to traveling,
Yeah.
when you get to be age 70, you may just be tired. So, have some joy while
Yeah.
you're working.
Actually,
That's the thing
I
with
just
some of the
came
extreme fire.
yeah, I just came back from a yoga class before for hopping on here, and the lady literally told us that she was glad she hiked Machu Picchu when she was younger because now like her bones ache and she can't like do any hiking anymore. And it's exactly what you said, like just do it while you're young and you're able to, and even going in debt, like obviously you don't want to go crazy and be stressed and have loads of debt. But if an opportunity came that was special and you did go in debt, I honestly would probably take it myself. Like if it's something like that, that is, a rarity that comes up and that makes you super happy. The trick is you just don't go crazy, and go in debt over every single thing can't make you happy, like pick the ones that really make you happy.
Well, yeah, that's like anything is you have to prioritize, and that's
Yeah,
what we're talking about is
yeah.
setting those priorities. So the next question is, what is one simple thing that you can do each year to set yourself up for financial success?
I'm going to go back to your boring example before when you mentioned 401k. So for me, like one thing that stuck, like we had a 401k plan, and this is going to sound crazy, but they matched 100% of 100% you put in up to the legal max. So I think it was like
Nice.
$15,000 at the time. So if I put in $15,000, they would give me a free $15,000. Like not even invested, like it's crazy, which is really rare. But that example, I was like, oh man, I remember someone saying, look, if you just maxed your 401k every year and did nothing else and just blew the rest of the money, like you'd still be fine. You'd be a millionaire next number of years. And that was like, oh man, because that is just simple math. And obviously, like if you invested it and the stock market didn't crash for 20 years in a row, right? But you would eventually be perfectly fine by doing that one thing. So that motivated me. And I remember at the time I was like, well, I'd have to jack my like percentage of my paycheck to like 90% or 60%, and so I did it, and I had to figure out how to survive for a handful of months until I hit my, because I wanted to get it real fast in case it changed.
Mhm.
So I just like maxed it whatever I could max it for like 3 or 4 months. I didn't have money. I would pull from savings or like eat cheaply or whatever. But then every year from that point forward, while I was working, I maxed out the 401k even, and they did get away with get rid of the cool plan after a while. But you could still, I just maxed it out every year. And now that I'm self-employed, I maxed out my SEP IRA instead since I don't have a 401k. But you could do it with the Roth IRA or traditional IRA, right? $5,000 or $6,000 a month or a year. Just max it out and just make sure like that's one thing you do. So even if you don't do anything else, like it's compounding over time.
Yeah, and that's something that's a recurring theme is compounding interest.
Yeah.
Uh, that comes up on this podcast. half of the guests bring up compounding interest,
Do
so I think for people who are
because
watching
we're
and listening, you
nerds.
may get a theme there. But I think the other thing too is 401k match, what you were talking about, you are getting 100% return on
Yeah,
your money guaranteed. There is
guaranteed.
nowhere else that you can legally get
Yeah.
100% return on your money. And
Yes.
even if your employer is only matching you 50%, you're
Yeah.
getting a 50% return on your money automatically, besides whatever the investment brings you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's like that's free money. Never walk away from free money.
Yeah, and the other thing too, which I didn't catch on, and again is super simple and makes me sound so stupid. Like if you don't touch your money, like it just goes up over time. Like I never and because so I had a savings account and a checking that was like throughout my whole life. And I put money in savings and then I'd run out of money and send it back to checking. So I'd play this like transfer game, you know. But I never just left it alone. And the 401k or IRA or anything where there's rules and penalties, you don't touch it because you don't want to get dinged and cause a mess. So you just leave it alone. But by leaving alone, it just keeps growing. And I remember I hit like $50,000 in my 401k. And I was like, oh my, like I just felt so rich. And I was like, this is so crazy. I don't have to do anything. It just keeps growing because I'm not touching it and I keep contributing, and to this day, I haven't touched it. So obviously it's gone up a lot in 15 years or 10 years or whatever. But that like small, like, I don't know, like a little light bulb went off. I was like, don't touch it and just keep adding and it grows, like, but it's hard for
Yeah.
us because, and so the 401k and IRAs and any instrument like that, they give nice barriers where they make it annoying for you to pull from it because you're going to get like penalized, which is good because then you don't hopefully, pull from it.
Yeah, well, and it changes your habit with the
Yes.
money is because when you think about that, even with other money, it's like, well, if I take from it,
Yeah.
it's not going to grow. And I think that's a trade-off for people. Um, so what is one habit that people can change when it comes to their money?
Um, I think for me, it was being more conscious. Because of the whole net worth thing I saw people doing online, I decided to track that and like see where my money was going every month. And then, like I know if I go and buy something, it's going to be reflected in that next monthly report because like, it doesn't lie. It's just their facts or numbers, here's my debt, here's my checking account. It's going to change depending on my actions that month. So I think tracking that once a month really even more than budgeting, like I budgeted, but that like net worth, like the overall snapshot of my money that does, all the savings, the debt, everything really helped me like stay on track and be conscious of it. I started thinking about before I, put out my credit card for something. And then I'm like, well, hey, like I need to find ways to have more savings, right? For example, or to pay off my debt. And there's only two ways: you just spend less or you earn more. So I started working on it. And when you work on it, you could see like if I paid more debt, then like those numbers would change and my net worth would go up. If I earned more, the numbers would change and the net worth would go up. So it's cool that you could work on all these different variables, and have a visual snapshot and then track your journey over the months and over the years too. So that net worth tracking was huge for me. And then, I started, going through my recurring expenses and like I started like making it a game. Like, how can I get my net worth up higher? Like, what else can I do that I haven't done? So it really changed my brain and I stopped spending as much just basically because I kept thinking about it. I was conscious of it.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of us, because where do you learn this?
Yeah.
There's no place that you learn this, but, it's like having a map, and understanding like you are here. And if you want to go there, these are the
Yeah.
steps. And, like if you're looking at the map and, if you circle back in the other direction, you're not going to get to your goal. And that's essentially what you're doing is, if you spend money, well, it may put you on a different path that doesn't
Yeah.
take you to your goal. So it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like we've been talking about, spend the money if you want to spend the money. It's your
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
But just understand it may change your journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, there's some people who are talking about the different types of fire, like I always forget the name, the one where they're like, it's like, I don't know, like wealthy fire or something. Like they want to spend millions of dollars a year, which means they need to earn a lot of money, but that's like their choice. Like, well, I want to live this way and I don't have a problem with trade-off working more, Other people like, I want to work less. Okay, well, then you need to spend less. It goes back to that whole, the whole thing of your personality and your lifestyle, goals.
100%, 100%. So Jay,
Yeah.
what money myth are you trying to break?
Um, Probably the biggest for me is the whole home ownership stuff. Everyone says you have to own a home. It's the best thing for you financially. And I don't necessarily agree. Like, I love to rent. I like the freedom of renting. And I like using whatever money you save from spending on the home, investing it instead, and having, index funds and the stock market be where my, quote investments are versus the house. And I think a lot of people get sold, hey, like that's the American dream. That's like how you make an adult. You own your home, which is fine. And most people probably would be better owning their home for sure. Like, I definitely think that. But I think some people that like to travel, that like the freedom, that are very minimalist, you don't need to own a home in order to be successful, I guess, is my overall, thing here.
Well, and I think that ties into everything that you've been talking about. There's no one path to financial success and no one
Yeah.
tool or resource that's going to help you get there. And that it's like you talk about is what's right for you. Is
Yeah.
owning a home the right choice for you? And only
Yep.
you will know that. Nobody's going to be able to help you make that. I mean, people will be able to help you make the decision, but nobody's going to have the answer for you.
Yeah. And if you don't have an answer, if you don't know yourself, other people are going to tell you one way. And then you're probably like I did. Like, when we bought the house on a whim, it was mainly because everyone said this is what you do is you own a home. So instead of renting, we bought. Like, I was miserable.
Well,
And
but how would you know?
yeah,
You know.
yeah. It was a good thing to do.
So and that's the value of the work that you and other personal finance bloggers, like Mr. Money Mustache, uh, are doing. He's one of the pioneers. For people who haven't checked him out, I'd also recommend checking out
Yeah.
his stuff. Um, but that I think you can't have these expectations of yourself that you should know something like owning a home, not
Yeah.
owning a home. But I think what you should do is change the way you think about money to know what questions you should ask, because I think that's the big key is, okay, well, what questions do I need to know to have the answer to decide whether I should own or rent?
Yeah.
How do I figure that out? So you make the decision for yourself. And I think that's a value for everybody. And the message, that I think is everybody learn the questions you need to ask, make your own decision,
Yeah.
find your own
Yeah.
path.
Yeah, and don't
So
be afraid to like change. Like, we go in different seasons, like some years, like we rented our whole life, or after we bought the house, we ended up selling it. We rented for a few years, and then for my family, it made sense to buy again. And even though I did not want to do it, I was in a different position. I had more money. We know we were going to be long term, and I was like, okay, fine. So technically, I still own right now, but if I could change it, I'd go back to renting if everyone in the family allowed it.
yeah, well, and that's just it. It's things change,
Yeah,
circumstances change, and you have to go back and look at things and
yeah.
reassess them. You can't make a decision with your money and never revisit it again.
Oh yeah, no, everything. Yeah, saving, debt, investing, everything. Life just keeps changing, and you have to change with it as best you can.
Definitely, definitely. So, let's get out the time machine for a minute.
Okay.
Is what advice would you give your younger self if you could go back in time knowing what you know now about money?
Um, I don't know if it's money. Well, it does tie to money a little bit, but I got into minimalism about 10 years ago, and that has really helped me change habits and lifestyle. I stopped, just walking into stores and just buying because I was bored, you know. I stopped accumulating, even like electronic stuff. Like, I have like one inbox and I get inbox zero every day. Like, I'm very methodical, and I set up these systems that are very simple. I only have one credit card, one savings account, like everything is minimal, which helps me, my brain, and helps save time. But then also does affect money as well. And even, if I could go back, right? Like, I was on that chase of, I want a lot of money, I want a fancy home, I want this, I want that. But like, I'm also 80% perfectly fine as is, those are just like niceties. And I should have focused more on like, being content than chasing, So I think minimalism for me has really helped that, and, applied to all types of, even career. I had lots of different jobs, and we talked about other websites that I'd owned. At one point I had about 13 or 14 different websites that I owned
Wow.
online, and your brain gets fragmented. And so I whittled it down to just like one or two. And so that, like, minimalism, learning that early on would have affected a lot of changes faster, I think. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think that ties into everything that you've been talking about is think about what you really want and what's really important and cut out a lot of the rest.
Yeah.
That's an easy way to get ahead, not only with your money, but in life is,
Yeah.
to cut out the stuff that's not going to help you achieve your goals. Think about
Exactly.
the right
Yeah.
tools and resources to get to your goals.
I think it's
So
easier to cut out stuff than to add stuff too. At least for me, I think it is.
totally. Now, I think people overlook that. It's like, if you get rid of, like we were talking about earlier, some subscriptions you have. Like, when was the last time you watched Paramount Plus? Maybe it's
Yeah.
okay. Love to pick on Paramount Plus, but
Dude, and I'll tell you this too, like, and like I say all the good things they do, which are a lot, and then I do stupid stuff too. I found out a couple months ago that I had a subscription to Avast, for the computer for spyware or whatever. And I did it like 4 or 5 years ago. Not only was I not using, I never activated it 4 or 5 years ago. It was like $30, and my brain said I activated it, and I did it, and then it went up to like 100. I calculated like over $500 on nothing, and I just caught it like a couple months ago. And so like, you still make mistakes and things slip through because your brain plays tricks on you. But I was like, oh man, $500. Like, I didn't even use the stupid thing. On the plus side, maybe it's not that necessary if like I haven't had any problems with my computer not having that stuff on there.
Yeah, well, and I think, one thing, a takeaway for everybody out there watching and listening is like Jay is somebody who thinks about money
Yeah.
and talks about money, and things slip by. Things slip by for all of us,
Yeah.
even if this is our career. So, don't judge yourself and say, God, I did something stupid. It's like, well,
Yeah.
just correct it and move on. It's like we all do have decisions that we regret,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
That would be another podcast. Decisions we regret.
Financial regret. Oh, I bet you that would explode. People love, I'll tell you, some of my most famous articles are when I do something stupid. People love reading it. It makes you feel so much better. You'd
Well,
have
that's why
a
I asked
hit
this
on your
time
hands.
machine question. I mean, that's what the time machine question is,
Yeah.
people say, it's really geared for people to say, okay, well, this is something, that wasn't quite the right decision, but, it was the right decision at the time.
Right. Yeah, that's
I
important.
mean,
At the
that's the thing.
time, yeah, that's important.
So
Yeah.
I think people need to realize that. So, to close, what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
Oh man, I already gave you all my number one tips.
That's all right.
Yeah, I
Well,
should have
which one do you
saved
want
one
to
to the
underline?
end. I don't know, the lifestyle one. It's because I keep harping on it, but like, that's like the thing. And so I've been blogging and thinking about money for over 15 years, and it always comes back to like your dream lifestyle and what you want, and money, and like working, because we spend so much of our time working, and so like, you should be working towards something that is actually moving something forward. Like, yes, your money and survival, but something that makes your heart happy, like, I don't know, like, it's taken me years to come to this, and now that I'm more financially free, obviously I have the time to think, and I'm in a different position than many people. But that, like, once it dawned on me that I didn't have to work 24/7, and I could cut back things, and I could minimalize and still have all this happiness with less money, like that, like, it was like a epiphany, and so I think kind of all this stuff we're talking about, comes together. But think about, what you really want out of life and where you are now. And again, like, every day you can work on stuff that makes you happy with or without money, like, even for me, like going on a walk, like, that to me is like, so it brings me so happy. I could do that, or I could go spend $50 at a bar or something. That makes me happy, but they're equal happiness, like, so but but remembering, yes, money is important, but like at the end of the day, like your life like is more important than that. You just have to figure out the money part for a while until you get, pretty secure.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, that's that old saying is, like nobody, on their deathbed goes, boy, I wish I'd spent more time working or
Yeah.
accumulating or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
more like, I wish I'd spent more time with my kids or,
Right.
whatever,
Yep.
doing whatever brought you joy. So that's awesome advice.
Yeah.
So, Jay, where can people learn more about you now and what you're up to?
Oh, sure. Well, my blog that I talk about money at, every couple of weeks, I don't do it daily anymore, but it's budgetsaresexy.com. You can see an archive of my net worth reports and just life in the last, I think there's 2,000 articles that I've written in 15 years. I do other projects too, consulting type stuff. I have like an online resume, I guess you can call it. It's called jmoney.biz, just the letter J, then money, and then .biz. And that has like current projects I'm working on, retired projects that I used to work on, some other bio stuff about me. And then Twitter or X, whatever it's called, at budgets are sexy.
Are you
So
moving to Threads?
I'm on there, but I just forget. Every now and then a
Oh.
little message will come on and it tricks me into going to Threads. I'm like, ah, dang it. And then I haven't been on like a month. Are you on there? Have you done it?
I'm on there and I was just thinking, boy, maybe I need to actually post on there.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. There's so
It's like
many to choose
everybody's
from.
there, but nobody's posting.
Right. I know. It's a tricky one.
So, cool, cool. Well, thanks for coming on today. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, this is great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you everyone for tuning into this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today, please subscribe and let's change the way we think about money.